Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Obsession isn't the sickness. Apathy is. The world teaches moderation because it fears intensity. It calls you balanced when you're harmless and wise when you quit early. But the truth is simple. No empire was built by moderation. No masterpiece was painted by someone who only loved art sometimes. The men who moved history were intoxicated, addicted, drenched in the fire of something they refused to live without. To love it more than anything doesn't mean it's easy. It means you'll crawl for it, starve for it, die and resurrect for it. Anything less is casual affection, and affection doesn't conquer kingdoms. Look around. The world's loudest critics are those who never loved anything deeply. They mock your intensity because it reminds them of their own apathy. They label it toxic. They call it too much. But you can't build legacies on lukewarm effort. You don't change your fate with balance. Love it more than anything and you won't need motivation. You'll need restraint, because when your mind bends around your mission like gravity bends light, every breath becomes an offering. You won't need to force effort. You'll need to protect it. From dilution, from distraction, from people who say, take it easy. When you were born to set the standard. The man who loves it more than anything no longer debates whether he should. The choice was made long ago, quietly, without applause. While others journaled their intentions, he sharpened his execution. While others meditated on alignment, he bled for precision. Obsession became oxygen. Delay became blasphemy. He didn't fall in love with the result. He fell in love with the process that forged him. The wait, the silence, the hours no one sees. That's the price. And to him, it's sacred. You must love it more than relief, more than weekends, more than the comfort of fitting in. Because every ounce of real growth strips you of something the average man clings to. Sleep, praise, comfort, social acceptance. You will bleed out parts of yourself to hold the sword that carves your future. And if you hesitate, if you ask whether it's worth it, you're not ready. Because the men who rise never ask. They just rise. They burn. They let the world call them obsessive, while quietly building something obsession alone could produce. At first, the flame is small. You guard it like a secret. You fan it in silence. You let it devour distractions and fuel your solitude. It won't roar right away, but if you feed it daily, with action, with hunger, with discipline, it will consume your entire being. It will turn your bones into steel, your doubt into fuel, your fatigue into rhythm. And when that fire grows large enough, the world will feel it before it sees it. That's when the narrative shifts. They'll say, you've changed. And you will look them in the eye and say, finally. Do not seek balance, seek the tipping point. That moment where love turns into necessity, where working on your craft no longer feels optional, where resting feels like betrayal, where distraction becomes disgusting. That level of emotional saturation cannot be taught. It must be earned through loneliness, repetition, and rejection. It must be tested in silence, because love without sacrifice is lust. Love without discipline is fantasy, but love forged in fire becomes indestructible. People think burnout comes from working too hard, but burnout comes from working without love. When your soul's not aligned with the thing you're building, every step drains you. But when you love it more than anything, even the pain makes sense. You bleed and smile, you lose and return, you fail and feel alive. That's the paradox of real love. It doesn't guarantee ease, but it makes effort feel divine. And once you taste that, the idea of quitting becomes repulsive. You must love it enough to miss the party, enough to be misunderstood, enough to be alone, because greatness is a lonely feast. And most would rather starve with company than eat in isolation. But the man who loves it more than anything, he eats alone. He trains in the dark. He becomes a ghost to the world so he can haunt it later with undeniable excellence. And when he returns, they won't recognize him. He'll speak less, move sharper, and carry an aura that only obsession can sculpt. You cannot fake this. You cannot borrow this. No course, coach, or calendar hack can summon this fire. It must emerge from the raw truth that you were built for this and nothing else, that your lungs were made to breathe its fumes, that your heart beats in sync with its rhythm. When you love it more than anything, you don't chase success, you become its gravity. Everything bends toward you, not because you're lucky, but because you outlasted the phase where others gave up. Love doesn't bloom in comfort, it germinates in the crucible of effort. Flow, the psychological holy land, is not found by doing what you're good at, it's found by aiming just beyond your reach. That 4% edge, that razor-thin threshold between chaos and control, that's where the brain goes quiet and the soul comes alive. You're no longer thinking, you're no longer hoping, you are. You move like a storm with purpose, no audience, no scoreboard, just the rhythm of a man in sync with his obsession. That's where love grows roots, not in success, but in immersion, not in perfection. Most chase flow through hacks. They look for the shortcut to getting in the zone, but the zone is earned, not manufactured. You don't fall into it. You climb through repetition, through friction, through failure that nearly breaks you. You climb by showing up when every part of you begs for escape. And when you hit that invisible moment, when the challenge slightly outpaces your preparation, you're pulled into something larger than choice, something sacred. That's not productivity, that's worship. And only those who love the craft more than the outcome ever touch that frequency. To love the process is to fall in love with that 4%, that edge where discomfort kisses potential, that narrow window where time dilates and your ego dissolves. The world thinks obsession is blind, but the man in flow sees more, not less. He sees nuance. He sees motion before it happens. He sees the entire map because he no longer has to ask, why am I here? He is fused with the answer. And that fusion, that's what separates passion from flirtation. Every great work, every legendary performance, every unforgettable moment, the origin story is identical. Someone chose to stay longer at the edge. They danced with the 4%, they bled inside the zone where skill trembled, but will remained. The average man flees that place. It's too quiet, too confronting. But the man who loves it more than anything, he camps there, he trains there, he builds a life in the tension between current and potential. He doesn't crave woe, he lives there. Flow doesn't reward the talented, it rewards the tuned. It rewards those who know the art of deliberate challenge. Not so big it overwhelms, not so easy it dulls, but calibrated just right, like a sniper's aim, until your brain has no choice but to focus fully. That level of attention is rare, because it can't be faked, it can't be multitasked, it can't be scrolled to. You have to earn it by loving your craft enough to inch forward without applause, to suffer daily in silence, to hit the zone alone and never brag about it. That's the difference. Most people want the rewards of flow, but not the architecture. They want the output, not the inner war. But love built on discipline doesn't need results to justify its existence. It shows up for the 4%. It returns to the threshold. It keeps returning until identity becomes obsession, until identity becomes obsession, becomes peace. And that peace, it looks intense from the outside, but inside it feels like home. You won't always feel inspired, but if you build your life around that challenge to skill edge, you won't need inspiration. You just plug in. Your body knows the rhythm, your mind knows the weight. Your spirit, if it's been forged in truth, knows that this space is holy. The hard part is getting to the edge consistently. The beautiful part is, once you're there, the resistance evaporates. What's left is precision, rhythm, and something close to divinity. They'll say, you're addicted to work, but they don't understand. You're addicted to resonance, to the full presence of doing something real. They don't feel that. They're stuck in cycles of stimulation, drowning in dopamine. But you've tasted something rarer than pleasure. You've tasted purpose mid-mayhem. And that flavor ruins you for mediocrity. Forever. That's what loving it more than anything actually means. You've fused with the ritual, and now your heartbeat echoes the tempo of craft. You don't chase discipline anymore. You chase moments where time disappears. You build your schedule not around optimization, but immersion. You protect the edges where love is born, because in that 4% zone, the world bends. Your limits dissolve, your doubts vanish, and what's left is the raw, sharpened core of who you are. Unapologetic, unfinished, and on fire. There is no substitute, no shortcut, no reward more real. Pain without meaning is torture. Pain with meaning is transformation. The brain cannot always stop suffering, but it can give it a narrative. That is the dividing line between despair and devotion. When you choose your pain, when you walk into it willingly, it no longer owns you. It becomes part of your architecture. Most avoid suffering like it's poison, but suffering, when chosen, becomes a forge. You feel the same fire, but it burns with different rules. Now it's not punishment, it's proof. And proof is what separates dabblers from disciples. You are built to endure, but only when the why runs deep enough. Neuroscience calls it cortical reassignment. The body responds differently when the brain interprets the pain as necessary. Athletes push through agony not because they're superhuman, but because their pain is narrative aligned. Soldiers walk into hell not because they feel no fear, but because their suffering has been assigned meaning. This is not theory, it's biology. The nervous system flinches, but the mind reframes. And that reframing is what elevates pain into purpose. The man who loves it more than anything rewrites the story of pain. He doesn't fear the discomfort. He studies it. He leans into it. He asks not how to avoid it, but how to wield it. The world trains you to run from it, to medicate it, to numb it. But what they don't tell you is that the most valuable people on this planet volunteered for pain that the average man ran from. They didn't suffer because life was cruel. They suffered because they were crafting something worthy of their pain. This is why discipline doesn't feel like suffering to those who love it. It feels like sculpture. It feels like molding potential with bloody hands. They don't wake up afraid of the hardship. They are afraid of wasting it. Because once you've built your pain into purpose, you no longer see the grind as a sacrifice. You see it as sacred. You stop fantasizing about ease. You stop envying comfort. Because you've tasted the power of doing something that hurts and heals at the same time. There is no life without pain. That's not a tragedy. That's the design. Pain is the tax life charges for doing anything meaningful. But if you choose the pain, you reclaim the control. You stare into the eyes of discomfort and say, "You work for me now." And from that moment forward, every rep, every rejection, every silent failure, it all feeds the same fire. Not because it feels good, but because it feels necessary. What most call burnout is not the volume of effort, it's the absence of meaning. You can suffer for 10 hours and feel alive, or suffer for 10 minutes and feel broken. It's not about the pain, it's about whether the pain serves something bigger than you. That's what love does. It ties your suffering to a vision. It makes the agony holy. It makes you grateful for the scars because they were earned in pursuit of something eternal. Not comfort, not ease, but something worthy of the cost. The greatest lie you were sold is that pain should always be avoided, that love should be soft, that purpose should feel gentle. But the reality? The deepest forms of love demand your blood. They demand your time, your attention, your sanity. They eat your former self alive, but what they give you in return, the clarity, the power, the identity forged in fire, is irreplaceable, and no one can give it to you. You must suffer into it. If you don't choose your pain, it gets assigned to you. Life will throw trials either way, but only the man who chooses his burden transforms it into a weapon. The rest carry it like a sentence. That's the difference between pain that breaks you and pain that builds you. One is an anchor, the other is a chisel. And once you understand that, you'll stop negotiating with comfort and start waging war with it. Love is not proven in pleasure, love is proven in pressure. Anyone can show up when it's easy. Anyone can speak grand words and dream in safety. But when it hurts, when it's lonely, when you're exhausted, doubting, and mocked for your silence, that's where love becomes real. Not because it feels good, but because you kept going anyway. You stayed, you bled, you believed. And that consistency, forged in voluntary suffering, built something even pain could not touch. Everything you love sends a signal, not metaphorically, neurologically. The mind orients itself toward what you pour your attention into. Emotion, repetition, movement, they emit a frequency the brain cannot ignore. Over time, the neurons rewire, your awareness narrows, and your inner world begins muting anything that doesn't align. What began as obsession becomes filtration. You stop hearing noise, you stop seeing distractions, because the thing you love has become the lighthouse. Everything else fades like static behind it. That's not magic, that's biology, weaponized by purpose. It happens slowly at first. You begin checking different books, walking different paths, noticing different details. The mundane becomes irrelevant. Mundane people even more so. You become allergic to surface-level talk. Shallow rhythms bore you. The small talk, the gossip, the social theater. It all becomes intolerable, not because you're better, but because you've changed your station. You're dialed into something richer, heavier, more precise, and only those broadcasting on that frequency can reach you now. Love edits your world without asking permission. Your subconscious starts running background filters, a sorting algorithm written by your highest aim. It studies every conversation, every moment, every opportunity, asking one question: does this serve the mission? And if the answer's no, your energy withdraws, your posture changes, your chemistry shifts. Because once you've burned for something, your biology doesn't waste bandwidth on noise. That's the unseen cost of deep love. It makes you intolerant of everything less than real. It trims the excess without mercy. Most people don't understand why they feel so scattered, so divided, so bored. It's not that the world lacks meaning. It's that they've never tuned in. They've never poured enough attention into one thing for it to rewrite their perception. They sample, they skim, they scroll, but they never dive deep enough to make meaning magnetic. Meaning only sharpens when filtered through commitment, and commitment only comes when you love it more than anything. This is why deep focus is a byproduct of devotion. You don't have to chase concentration when you burn for what you're doing. Your nervous system organizes around the flame. You stop needing pomodoros and productivity hacks. You become incapable of distraction. The world could be collapsing outside and you'd still be dialed into your craft because nothing outside it feels real anymore. Love thins the veil between focus and obsession until the two become indistinguishable. The world sells you clarity through planning, through goal setting. But real clarity isn't written. It's felt. It's the internal compass that forms when your attention is no longer hijacked, when your nervous system has been starved of cheap dopamine long enough to start craving precision again. That craving reshapes you. You start waking up not asking, "What do I need to do today?" but "What am I building with every movement I make?" Love turns every gesture into architecture, every breath into alignment. You don't even realize how far you've changed until you meet the old version of yourself in someone else. They speak, you nod, but there's no resonance. Their words feel blurry, distant. That's when you understand the power of this frequency shift. It has nothing to do with superiority, and everything to do with trajectory. They're walking in circles. You're moving in a line carved by obsession, and lines drawn by obsession never curve back to who you were before. Eventually, the world starts responding, not quickly, but undeniably. Doors begin to open, not because you chased them, but because you became the kind of person they were meant to open for. Opportunities are frequencies too. They sense who's prepared. They slide past the unsure. They land in the lap of those whose attention has been shaped into a blade. That's the paradox. Your devotion makes you magnetic, not to everything, but to everything that matters. The frequency of love comes with casualties. Comfort, belonging, familiarity. You may lose entire circles of friends, entire former identities, but you won't mourn them. Because what you're building now moves deeper than nostalgia. It moves toward destiny. And that kind of movement cannot be shared with everyone. It's too precise, too demanding, too rare. And that's the point. That's the cost of tuning in to something only the few ever do. Full alignment. The brain of the obsessed isn't broken. It's focused. What society calls dysfunction is often just precision without permission. Prefrontal cortex activation increases in those who obsess. The part of your mind responsible for mapping decades ahead lights up like a battlefield under floodlight. This isn't fantasy. This is fMRI-level evidence. Those who cannot stop thinking about their mission are not lost, they are orienting. They are tracking the future through every step of the present. The rest of the world lives in fragments. The obsessed live on timelines longer than their lifespan, and that changes everything. Most mistake obsession for addiction. But addiction hijacks impulse, obsession hijacks strategy. One steals clarity, the other produces it. The man obsessed with a vision isn't compulsive, he's possessed. He turns even mundane action into alignment. He cannot relax around meaningless tasks, not because he's anxious, but because he's attuned. When something doesn't pull him forward with gravitational force, he feels it in his bone. Discomfort, irritation, resistance. That's not distraction, that's a compass screaming. You're wasting time. You can tell who's obsessed by the way they treat boredom. The average man scrolls. The obsessed man calibrates. He turns silence into schematics. He doesn't escape stillness, he interrogates it. And what emerges isn't just inspiration, it's architecture. Blueprints carved in mental stone. Most build castles out of sand and wonder why they sink. But the obsessed, they build foundations 10 miles deep before they ever show a single floor to the world. Their patience is weaponized, their vision a war map. Love alone doesn't fuel legacy, obsession does. Because love without obsession wavers. It falls apart under pressure. It asks for breaks. But obsession? Obsession forgets the word break. It doesn't check the clock. It doesn't need reminders. It orbits a single sun and reshapes time to revolve around it. If your dream doesn't do that to you, if it doesn't hijack your circadian rhythm, if it doesn't haunt your waking thoughts and bleed into your sleep, then it's not sacred enough to survive the fire.